Good day, everyone. A very warm welcome to this online webinar titled Crafting Experiences, Stories by Experiential Designers from Southeast Asia. This event is presented by the Society of Experiential Graphic Design in partnership with the Design Singapore Council and supported by the National Design Centre. In part 1 of this series, we will be covering environmental graphics and wayfinding design. Today's webinar consists of mainly 3 portions. We will be starting off with a short sharing by each of our panelists, where they will be talking about who they are and showcasing some of their past works. Following that, we will proceed with a panel discussion before ending off with a Q&A segment, where the panel will be taking questions from the audience. Moderating today's session are SEGD Singapore co-chairs Ola Ramanuk and Yah-Leng. Currently a creative director of Divraj, Ola oversees projects in entertainment, attractions, cultural and commercial sectors in Singapore and the region. An avid proponent of taking a holistic approach to every design challenge, Ola believes in meaningful and purposeful solutions that go beyond the pure aesthetics or latest trends. She's inspired by designs that break the mold, whether it is through exploration of construction methods, innovative space planning, graphics, or simply through rethinking everyday objects. Yah-Leng is the founder of V2 Singapore Practice and co-founder of V2 Architects in Paris. He has built a rich multicultural experience from his formative years in Indonesia, France, and Singapore. Embracing multidisciplinary approaches to grow the Singapore practice has established Jan's diverse expertise in sustainable architecture, cultural curation, and exhibition design. He is a frequent speaker on tropical sustainability and museum curation in the region and has been appointed the Festival Director of Archifest 2018, as well as one of the 5 curators of the Arts in Transit for the new Jurong Railway line in Singapore.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Charlotte, for this introduction. We'd like to thank everyone again for joining us for SEGD's first in a series of quarterly talks this year entitled Crafting Experiences, Stories by Experiential Designers from Southeast Asia. Today, our discussion will focus on environmental graphics and wayfinding design. Our 3 speakers joining us today are esteemed and accomplished practitioners in the field who have contributed to the field immensely through their careers and continue to do so today. With us, we have Kelly Cheng, the creative director of the Press Room, Yah-Leng Yu, one half of the creative duo of Foreign Policy Studio, and William Harold Wong of William Harold Wong and Associates and Zakti. So before we proceed to our main event with the speakers, we're going to quickly introduce just what experiential design and what experiential graphic design is. I'm going to hand it over to Jan.
Thank you, Ola. Thank you, Ola. So welcome again, everyone. We are really happy and very honored to be with you here this evening. Thanks again for Design Singapore for hosting us tonight. Thanks everyone for joining this first series of talk. And so, as mentioned by Ola, I will be doing a brief introduction on what is experiential design. So, experiential design in interiors integrates multiple disciplines to create a memorable interaction and to enhance a certain attribute in the overall experience. So, experience comes first, and to have a highly human-centered approach to design. So besides functionality, comfort, aesthetic, and so on, experiential design also addresses the psychological aspect of human interaction within or with the built environment. For example, as we can see here, it is impressive to walk into an aesthetically well-crafted hotel lobby, but it is even more inspiring to engage, to work into a hotel like when it is holistically curated from the reception desk to the guest lobby and from the guest lobby to the room. So to have this highly curated space. So why is experiential design important? many reasons, like the growing dependence on technological device is extensively changing human behavior in day-to-day life. And so it is increasingly more and more challenging to create engagement in public spaces with conventional methods. And that's the reason why we need experiential design, we need experiential designers, and that's what we'll be talking about later on today in this age of experience. So the 5 major categories of experiential design, which one are they? Exhibition design, a hybrid of storytelling and environment, often found in museums and art galleries, something that is dear to us. Ola and myself, we are also museum specialists. That's how we met each other as well. We've been collaborating together. Marketing, sensory experiences like Times Square in New York, guerrilla marketing and product experiences and launches, entertainment, with, of course, things that we are not experiencing right now in terms of concert and event, but we are all very much aware of it. Placemaking, public installations and landmarks which define the space around us, and environmental graphics, which is what we'll be talking about today for messages, information, and imagery. Now, what is experiential graphic design? From experiential design, experiential graphic design. So experiential graphic design involves the orchestration of typography, color, imagery, form, technology, and especially content to create environments that communicate. So we can say it loud. Experiential graphic design is definitely like communicating with the rest of the people to have a message that is clear, that is impactful, and highly human. So those are the important elements. And so the main category is the core component of experiential graphic design, signage and wayfinding, interpretive, and placemaking. Signage and wayfinding, this is what we'll be talking about today with our speakers. That like basically requires more than wayfinding requires more than signage. It includes a pathway, visual cues, landmarks, and so on to create this mental map of a site or an environment and to help people to find their way through the environment. As simple as that. Interpretive, that's what we are using mainly in exhibit, this form of like displaying elements. So to tell a story about the meaning of a concept. So that's what interpretive is for with experiential graphic design. And last but not least, placemaking that creates a distinctive image for a site that can be expressed in several ways. So that's the form of communication, a framework of communication that is this additional layer to architecture, interior, and so on to make it more holistic one more time. So now I hand over to Ola to explain to you a little bit more what is SEGD and what we do.
Sure. So SEGD is the Society for Experiential Graphic Design. Myself and Jan are the co-chairs of the Singapore chapter, which we both started last year. And this is our first event here in Singapore. And it really is to educate, connect, and inspire the global multidisciplinary community of professionals that connect people to place. And here, our goal is to connect these professionals within the region, within Southeast Asia. So SEGD connects designers that start in a multitude of fields, through graphic design, to industrial design, to architecture, to landscape, to interactive design, and so many more fields. In fact, what makes it so interesting is that to be good in experiential graphic design, you kind of have to have the skills in all of these disciplines. Communication, typography, solving problems, making real physical things, dealing with space, and understanding user-centered experience in interaction design are all part of this experiential graphic design. So SEGD's goals is to educate, connect, and inspire a global community. Members are very diverse and include architects, exhibition designers, fabricators, academics, students, and others who have a hand in bringing design concepts to reality. The organization was established in 1973 to share the best practices and raise professional standards in the field, and today it exists to educate, inspire, and connect the global multidisciplinary community of professionals, creating experience that connect people to place. There are currently 40 chapters globally and counting, with SEGD Singapore chapter that started in 2020. So SEGD educates through workshops, webinars, videos, online resources, and other events that provide professional development and support on topics ranging from accessibility and universal design to providing documentation and communication tools to business development and sustainability in the practice areas of wayfinding, placemaking and identity, exhibition and public installations, and research and strategy and planning. There are design awards that SEGD puts on every year to celebrate the practitioners globally. And there's also a student category for the up-and-coming designers and students that are entering the field. SEGD connects by producing events for knowledge sharing and opportunities to connect with fellow practitioners in design and industry. The annual SEGD conference is currently the only international conference focused on experiential graphic design. Aside from there are many other events that SEGD puts on annually to benefit the members and the community at large. Other events that SEGD puts on, engagements such as podcasts, SEGD talks, conferences and webinars, and study workbooks. Other events also focus on new and cutting-edge technologies through a series of digitally centric X-branded events. For example, we have X Lab with new and emerging technologies that are creating the future of connecting to place, Design X, which is an annual digital signage expo, and Explorer, which provides a digital foundations bootcamp that gives designers the hands-on skills needed to make with digital. And finally, SEGD inspires by promoting and educating about experiential design, nurturing the demand for design excellence, serving as a source of education, and strengthening the ties with educational programs that provide the academic underpinnings of our field. So if you're interested in joining our global community or just simply interested in finding out what SEGD is, feel free to email us, contact us, or sign up at a link that you see on the screen that you will see again at the end of this talk. There is a special membership rate currently for the Southeast Asia region, so we hope that the community can grow here. SEGD membership includes a number of benefits and tools. When you become a member, you have access to the toolbox for a members-only resource of reference documents, directories, podcasts, links, events, RFQs and RFPs, salary surveys, and more. Aside from that, you also get benefits from being published on the SEGD's website, being invited to speak at certain events, and also receiving discounts to global award ceremonies and other events. So without further ado, we're moving on to the fun portion of our talk. I'm going to hand it over to Jan.
So we are also fun as our speakers, but let's get to know our speakers. Before doing this, just to share with you a little bit of this journey that we are in together. So SEGD is all about innovation, inspiration, and so on. So we all have had this webinar fatigue for more than a year now. So we're doing something a little bit more fresh. We'll have actually four portions in what we're about to embark on. So the first one being the fast and curious, where we'll be having like questions to our speakers as a form of like ice-breaking moment, then followed by a show and tell, where the speakers will be able to show us and tell us a little bit more of the behind the scene, and then the talk themselves, with the system of 24 slides, 24 seconds, a bit like the Pecha Kucha system, but it's a bit more because Pecha Kucha is 20 by 20, is too fast. So 24 by 24, and then we will end up with the Q&A. So, like this. So now we will have the sequence between, like, we will start with Kelly, then Yah-Leng, and then William. So that's the sequence, Kelly, Yah-Leng, and William. So fast and curious, like this. All right, Kelly. So just one answer, as fast as possible. So Kelly, digital or manual?
Digital.
Morning or night?
Night.
Night. Times New Roman or Arial?
I'm still Roman.
Midnight oil or olive oil?
Olive oil.
Yes, we have grown. We have grown. Wayfinding or find your way?
Find your way.
Thank you, Kelly. RGB or CMYK? Oops, the typo, CMYK. RGB, okay.
Digital.
Digital. All right, all right. Okay, thanks a lot, Kelly. Yah-Leng, your turn. Like this. So, Yah-Leng,
Yep.
pen or pencil?
Pencil.
Pencil, okay. Photoshop or InDesign?
InDesign.
InDesign, okay. Fast or cheap?
Fast.
Life imitates art or art imitates life?
Art imitates life.
Yes. Lorem or Ipsum?
Laura.
And grayscale or color?
Color.
Ah, yes.
Graphic design.
Graphic design, yes. William, your turn, William.
Yes,
So, okay. PC or Mac?
of course it's Mac.
Ah, but yes, of course. I'm architect, sorry, Mac. Serif or sans serif?
Sheriff,
Serif. Chill or chili?
Chile,
Chili. Less is more or more is more?
less is more.
Less is more. Toilet sign or toilet paper?
I prefer to use OR.
Yes, OR. Portrait or landscape?
Landscape.
Landscape. All right, thanks a lot, guys. So now I hand over to Olaf for the show and tell, a bit more behind the scene and so on.
So we have a short questionnaire for each of the speakers. They've seen the questions in advance, so there will be a short response that they'll have for us in response to each question. So we're going to start off with Kelly once again.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, Kelly. What is the most used design tool on your desk and why?
I'll show you my computer, of course.
No brainer. All right. What inspires you around your design space?
The mess around me.
Wow. Okay. Looks very inspiring. And what is your favorite experiential graphic design project in the region?
It's got to be the Snoopy Museum in Tokyo.
Okay. Okay, nice. All right. Thank you, Kelly. We're going to move on to Yah-Leng next. All right, Yah-Leng, when do you feel the most creative?
In the bathtub.
Oh, okay. Nice. What is the most used design tool on your desk and why?
Actually, it's my fountain pen.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And what is the most unexpected thing or item in your studio?
I don't know what's unexpected.
Something that we might necessarily not expect that's in the designer's studio.
I don't know. I don't think it's unexpected. Maybe it's my hand cream.
Okay, all right. Beauty products, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Yah-Leng. Last but not least, we have William. All right, William, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
All right, William, what inspires you around your design space?
In the office, our huge collection of books. I don't have many books on design, but I focus on Asia, particularly Southeast Asia, from history, symbols, textiles, anything from cartoonists to philosophers. In fact, sometimes they're the same person.
Okay, all right. Thanks, William. What is your favorite experiential graphic design project in the region?
I think it would be our museum projects, particularly Museum Sultan Abu Bakar, which I will show in this forum.
Okay. And the last question, when do you feel the most creative?
I think there's no specific time or mood of the day. No, it just happens suddenly, anytime, anywhere. I can't explain it.
That is all we have for the get to know you portion of this talk.
So now we can finally enter into the main core of our talk, which is basically the talk from the speakers. So thanks again to the three speakers to be with us today, and thanks everyone to be with us as well. So Kelly Cheng is someone that is very dear to me. That I met more than 12 years ago when I arrived in Singapore, and she has been personally a true source of inspiration. But that's just a quick personal note to my dear Kelly. So trained as an architect, Kelly is the founder and creative director of Design Studio The Press Room, a publishing and design consultancy that designs everything from books, brands, exhibition, documentaries, and stage and film set design. An active educator, she has served as adjunct lecturer in Singapore universities and has sat on international design judging panels, including Red Dot Award, Nagoya Do, Design for Asia Award, Creative Circles Award, James Dyson Award, and so on. And in 2021, she was conferred the Skills Future Fellowship for her achievement in the industry, presented by the President of Singapore. The next accolade will be what? The goddess of graphic design in Singapore?
Okay, guys, so this is about stories about wayfinding and exhibition graphics design. So I wanted to share a few things about what I experienced in real life with clients and how these can usually kill the experience of wayfinding graphics. So it's really the what not to do. Okay, so some places are actually meant for you to get lost. When we were designing a museum, an art gallery, the client was so afraid that people would get lost that they want a sign every like 1 meter. At some point, the architect got a little bit frustrated because he's going to destroy his architecture. And he went, this is an art museum. This is not a hospital. So one of the strangest requests that we got is someone want us to put Braille on the directional signboard. It's like, hello, they are blind. So if you put Braille, how are they going to know where the signboard is? Unless you have some some audio cues that can lead them there in the first place. So sometimes client ask for really weird things. There's one concern that I find very strange, that client always call us to increase the size of the handicap sign on directional board. And for me, it's like, they are physically impaired, not visually impaired. Why do we need the handicap sign so big? Okay, and another strange request that I get all the time is that when you reach the toilet sign outside the toilet, clients always ask for it to be big. I'm like, you're already at the toilet. Why does the toilet sign have to be so big? And okay, so there is a difference between destination sign, where you mark the destination of a place, those have to be big, and directional sign, where is a signboard where you list out all the different places. Client always say, oh, make the font bigger, 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 bigger. But I mean, seriously, how big do you want it to be? Directional signboards are meant, if you can't read it, you can go closer. Okay, this car park zoning thing. Why is it that we can only use animals and flowers? Can't we use other symbols? Can't we be more creative? This is what you hire me for. Let's move away from animals and flowers. And okay, if you hire a wayfinding expert, you will get the best value if I can create as few signs as possible, and not the other way. So clients sometimes think that to get their money's worth, they want us to create as many signs as possible, but not everywhere is a Frankfurt airport. If you've been to Frankfurt airport, it's the beacon of getting lost, whether it's bad wayfinding or it's bad architecture. Okay, so the other thing is sometimes we tell clients that you don't actually really need any signboards because you can create visual landmarks, especially if you're in a park or in a garden, you can create actually sculptures, and it is actually much more memorable for people to remember their way. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you might have experienced this before. You go to a shopping mall and then you see the toilet sign, one on the left and then one on the right. But actually, whether you walk the left side or the right side one, it leads you to the same toilet. that is really confusing. So in wayfinding design, you don't need to give them too many choices. You, as the designer, has to be very decisive. Sometimes for me, you don't need so many directional signs. All you need are just some simple floor stickers, and they are much more effective. But clients always fear that, oh, I must replace them all the time, but they are probably much cheaper than if you make a really big signboard, and actually they are much more lasting than you imagine. Okay, so we also always have requests that they want as well a printed map for people to carry around to find their way. And so when they ask for a map, actually then they start to include so much info, and it becomes quite silly because it's like practically carrying a book around. So that's the other thing that we encounter. Okay, there's a difference between a city map and a floor plan. So we have requests before on directional signboard that the client wants us to include the floor plan, but it's very difficult because if you want it to navigate towards the direction that you're standing, that means you have to twist the map around like almost 360 degrees. A lot of clients think that axometrics are very nice. They always want us to do an axonometric sort of plan, but unfortunately, it's not very effective because a lot of laymen do not know how to read an axonometric. So I don't usually recommend it. Wayfinding has to be as simple as possible. Okay, so now moving to exhibition design. Exhibition design is really about storytelling. So you should make the presentation as simple as possible, as long as your content is good. You don't want to create a very complicated sort of scenario where you confuse your visitor. A very rich story can be simply told. So it's really about how you craft the story at the end of the day. While exhibition design is about storytelling, it is not a storybook. So people do not want to go there and read a lot of text. They want to go there and feel. It has to be experiential. So sometimes we get a lot of encounters where clients want to include so much text, and it really is not feasible because nobody likes to kind of like read lengthy words. This is a very strange request that we get all the time. Clients say, oh, can we not have the text on a flat panel? For me, it's like, then how to read? I mean, presenting text, sometimes the most effective way is still on the flat panel, but it depends on the material you use, the type or the font that you choose and all that. There are many ways that you can embellish text. Okay, interactive does not automatically mean touch screen. A lot of clients, when they say they want interactive, they usually think that they want a touch screen. But even if you put a black box and a chalk there, something that the visitor can just play with, it is as well as interactive as any touch screen or any electronic device. So they should kind of truly understand what is interactive. Okay, this is the other problem we encounter all the time. Clients think that we need an illustration for everything. So sometimes it is so literal, like put the headphones on. Do you really need an illustration for that? Okay, this is the other thing that we encounter a lot. This request for infographic. It's I don't know. It's some kind of a trend or something. Clients tend to think that everything needs an infographic. The truth is you don't, because some things can't even really be interpreted into an infographic. Okay, so people also like to use a video for every single interview. For me, no. Sometimes you just need a quote of from each person. Because if you can convey something in one sentence, why do you want to use a video? Videos are only used when you can't convey. So to end off this presentation, I'm going to show a video of an exhibition design that I did that hopefully does not have all those issues.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It was really exciting to see all of this and really fun. And I think you had a lot of fun in doing all of your slides. We have many questions already, but we will be keeping that for later. So to the audience, if you do have questions, feel free to send them, and then we will be keeping them for the Q&A session. So now we'll be giving that to Ola for her to introduce Yah-Leng.
Yes, so our next speaker on the panel is Yah-Leng Yu. She is the creative director of Foreign Policy Studio. Foreign Policy is a brand and design bureau based in Singapore that helps brands to tell their stories and craft experiences using strategy, graphic design, and interior design. The creative directors, Yah-Leng and Arthur, are a group of idea makers and storytellers, and the company is independently owned and creatively motivated. So Yah-Leng, welcome, and thank you so much for being here. And we're going to pass the slides over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Guess we can start. Thanks, Kelly, for the primer. That is awesome for my next chapter in this session. I wanted to talk about some projects that we did and maybe to show some of the strategies that we apply on the wayfinding, starting with this project that we did for Sifang Art Museum that is in Nanjing. And it's a relatively small wayfinding project that we did in conjunction with the branding that we also designed for them. And as with how we do in the studio, everything has to be cohesive, holistic. And we wanted to be sure that the language, the narrative, and the brand goes into the wayfinding as well. So in this case, the branding is really very clean. And because it's a museum, we wanted to make sure that everything is showcased and not being over-designed. So we designed a special typeface for the Chinese and for the logo, as well as then it was applied on all the collaterals as well as the wayfinding, as you can see here in some of the signages that we've applied. And because it's a really small museum and it's a very sort of, everything is white, it was kind of not so difficult to apply, but our strategy was really not to overwhelm the space because it's small, and also because it's a museum, we didn't want to be seen as the design overtaking the function of a museum, being the artwork is the most important element that has to be first and foremost in the museum. So I think that one is something that we are pretty happy about in terms of execution. The next project that I want to share is, if this slide moves, is another project that we did as, I guess, full project in branding as well as applying it to the wayfinding. It's a project in Hong Kong, restaurant in the Hong Kong Jockey Club, which we had sort of a full play with the branding as well as uniform. And because it's, well, the key DNA of the story, the narrative is really about the British, the centricity in a British colony in Hong Kong, and that we applied that style throughout the branding as well as to the interior wayfinding. We've got different kind of signages, whether it's directional signages or just just toilet signs and destination signs. We try to apply various different materials and styles to make it a little bit more interesting for the experience in the restaurant while the the guests are there. And we always try to explore different ways to express the different signages such that, I guess, in our terms, it's cohesive and it's very, holistic in the brand storytelling. So we will explore different materials and different ways of combining materials when we're building the signages as well as the graphics. For this one, it's also not a huge restaurant, but it was interesting where we could play with a huge wall of graphics as well as the different types of signages that we can employ in the space, whether it's on the floor or on the ground or on the walls and even on the entrance. This other project is a co-working project called the Working Capital, and a similar strategy is applied. We love to make sure that we wanted to make sure that we create unexpectedness in the wayfinding, but yet it's I guess functional as well as usable. Especially for this brand where it's supposed to be a more designy sort of co-working space. So something that we bear in mind when we were designing the wayfinding was to create different unexpected wayfinding visual cues where people could find a way, and at the same time it became sort of a signature and landmark where people could remember, because that was also a very complex place to design the wayfinding, because it was a combination of different sort of, I think 5 or 6 shop houses that were combined together. And I always take interest in designing the toilet signs. So always try to also just, I guess, explore different ways of expressing the toilet signs. And as you can see, we love playing with materials. So we would always try to combine different kind of materials to express the signages. I think for this project, it was sort of suitable because it's a more creative space that we could play with. Yeah, and then colors was important as well. So we worked with the interior design very closely, as we also the brand designers. So we were able to spearhead the colors and I guess leading the design in that way, such that the wayfinding sits perfectly in the space, not jarring and yet interesting. We also like to play with, because this is a creative space, we also explored with anamorphic signage. And this was actually layers of text that was, I guess, painted in different layers, but in one angle, you'll see them readable, but on the other, but you would not. So this was also executed in various different locations of the space. Including spaces that were not so sexy. We wanted to still play with it. Nothing was left to nothingness. This other project was a wayfinding project for Arab. They have a huge office in Singapore that was a 2-layer office that took out the entire floor in the building in the downtown area. And because it's such a complex office, well, it's complex in the sense that there were so many people, employees, and they needed to find a way. So we were able to work with them on developing something that is interesting and yet usable. As usual, I love to play with toilet signs. And we've actually employed various different visual elements on the signages itself to make it more interesting, which is what Arab wants. Because it was a huge space, there are different directional signs and destination signs that we need to take care of. And also naming, I guess, designing the different zones were really sort of complex. And some of them were identified by landmarks, as what Kelly had said before. Zoning, we took a strategy of using colors and I guess naming it with some of the projects that they have worked on. And that has created graphic elements that we could use to I guess, create a space in each zone. We were also very lucky that they were open for us to play with different materials again in the various signages. I think this has been a quite fun project for us as well, because it's not just figuring out where things should be. There's also a chance to make direction easier for the office using colors and graphics at the same time, and that the client was pretty open for us to do that as well. Where this is that kitchen area where we also included sort of a generated bird figure that the founder has sketched on his sketchbook. So that was also applied on the wall as part of the environmental graphics. yeah, very much. Thank you for having me. Hope you guys understood what I just shared.
Thank you, Yah-Leng. That was really great. We appreciate how your creativity, specifically in making the ordinary signages more playful and interesting and so creatively driven. So now we're going to pass on to the last speaker.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so thanks again, thanks again, Yah-Leng, and it was definitely like immersive, and the more we go into this talk, and the more we feel how immersive are all of these experiences. So it is a very good transition towards William, and it is a honor for me to introduce the body of work of William. So William works at the intersection of brand, culture, city, and community, enhancing the human and cultural experience of a place. He's passionate about Southeast Asian culture. Thank you, that's great, because this is exactly where we are, and has documented the region extensively in his early years. He also manages Zakti, a 360 design meet technology company with storytelling, very important, with storytelling at its core, with partner project offices in Dubai and Brunei, working on museums, galleries, and experiential spaces. William received a Lifetime Achievement Award from Malaysia and national awards from mainland China, Hong Kong, and India. He's a chairman of the Design Alliance Asia and the past president of Ecograda Ecodi. So it's fantastic to have you today, William. I'm sure we'll be listening religiously to your presentation. So let's welcome William. Thank you.
Okay, I'll give some background. In the late 80s and 90s, I was very involved in the local art scene and have designed many posters and exhibition catalogs. In 1997, Tony Blair became the young Prime Minister of UK, and we were all swept up in the excitement of those times, working on projects to promote UK's, the very beginning of the creative industries in Southeast Asia. This is one of our earliest signage projects. It was for Kuala Lumpur's first smart building with a tropical garden at the heart of the city. So we combined technology with nature, and my designer Clarissa created these cookie cutter patterns to represent the very large greenery around the building. I really love this project. Our office was on Kamuning Road, named after the old Kamuning trees in the neighborhood. However, like most Malaysians, I couldn't tell one tree from another. So when I created the car park signage identifying local trees, I was hoping to educate the public, myself included, about the real treasures that live around us. And this also became the client's corporate philosophy, or rather it reflected that. Atria is a refurbished neighborhood mall. The idea of the Malaysian rainforest as a concept came from the interior designers. There have been, of course, many attempts to bring nature back to the city, not only in landscaping, vertical gardens, rooftop farming, etc., but also in environmental design concepts. So we look at the form, the shapes, the textures, and the spirit of nature. Our toilet signs are like the small rocks and pebbles in the forest stream. Interestingly, the client's project engineer said to me, "Oh, now I get it. That stream of water for the toilets, this is where you pee." I laugh and say, "Hey, that's a very good alternative rationale for the signage." Atria is a very, very old shopping mall, 1985. At that time, wayfinding was done with images of animals like birds for the upper levels, elephant for mid-levels, and fish. Well, it's the basement floor. Simple and effective. I think Suntec City, Singapore had a similar system a long time ago. But in Malaysia, that system disappeared totally in the 80s or 90s in favor of minimal typography. So we kind of revived it at Atria. I always look for opportunities to inform, inspire, to educate the public, and placed next to the elevators in the shopping mall are really fascinating insights into the personalities of animals to evoke empathy, and for endangered species, how we can help them. You can see in the text for the monkey right at the bottom, a reference to WWF and responsible palm oil. This project is a commercial center in the midst of a really beautiful township with lakes, parks, and walking trails. So I was a bit disappointed when I saw the very tight cluster of concrete buildings in this development. There were 8 blocks of building named A, B, C, up to H. Each block had a name, for example, A for Ensign, B for Bellamy. The names were taken from street names from colonial days to reflect the colonial style architecture. So I wanted to introduce images of the flora and fauna from the surroundings into this commercial center to liven up what was essentially a kind of monochromatic gray and white environment. And this is how the building blocks are named. You can look for Faraday or just Block F. By the way, none of these visuals was executed due to budget constraints. I think it will only remain on paper. However, I mean, thanks to a good client, we were fully paid. But as designers, you know, that's only half the point. It's a pity not to be able to see your design being implemented. A work in progress. The client asked us whether we can have each letter support not only the name, but also a flower, animal, bird, or insect. You can see that an attempt here for D on the top right, D for Davidson and dragonfly. But it was a very difficult task because we only wanted images of nature found on the premises, unless for E, you bring in elephant. This museum was transformed from what I thought was a sadly abandoned colonial building, with a hot tarmac car park lot in front of the building, which we replaced with a shallow water pond and fountain for children to play. We had a good team, and credit must go to Dr. Farid, the museum director, and architects Tamegoro and Natsu Nagata. The logo we designed comprised of 3 iconic elements of this area: the pounding waves of the South China Sea, in the center, the bangau, a decorative and even spiritual guard on the traditional fisherman's boat, and the really exquisite wood carving tradition, which is found in this region. Wood carving is so important to this region, and wood unifies the exterior and interior of the museum. So outdoors, there are driftwood sculptures of birds and animals found in the district. The horses represent the town's well-known polo championship. At the time these photos was taken, another important animal to the state, the elephant, wasn't ready. I guess it takes a lot of driftwood to actually construct an elephant. Probably takes some time. The East Coast is really known as the cradle of Malay culture, especially wood carving. And here the museum uses the medium of wood again to unify or integrate the outdoors with the indoors. This building was originally a residence, and some entrances to the galleries were very small and hard to find, like the back door of a kitchen. We designed very large posters to draw attention to these gallery entrances and to help visitors find them with ease because they seem to be quite obscure from certain angles. The posters also serve to reinforce the museum's new identity. Images of old Pahang line the corridors, giving the visitors a sense of time and space and place. It was also an opportunity to show the classic patterns and colors of the woven cotton or silk fabric called the Tenun Pahang, which comes from this district. There are many master weavers at work in the villages around the museum. So we designed a visual system that reflected the local traditions. The checkered pattern of this woven cloth, the Tenun Pahang, is interpreted as simple cross lines. This grid or cross line is also seen in aerial views of the paddy fields or the rice fields. The Bilipis is a bird, which is one of the town symbol. I'm not sure whether it actually whistles. It is called the whistling duck, but it certainly lets out a very high-pitched sound. So the same checkered pattern of the textile appears on the signage, either engraved or silk screen in gloss on the matte white surface. I chose ITC Berkeley All-Star because of its association with academia. It was designed by Frederick Gaudi for the University of California Press in Berkeley. and I added FFD to achieve a balance of tradition and the contemporary. Founding Fathers was a book which was launched with an exhibition at the Etihad Museum in Dubai. The book featured portraits of the late president and the late vice president of UAE, as you can see on the right, from cover to cover. But unfortunately, the photographs alone would not be able to sustain the interest of visitors in an exhibition. So with our partner in UAE, we designed the exhibition through the eyes of the photographer Ramesh Shukru, who arrived in Dubai in the mid-80s and never left. I did this sketch on a plane en route from Malaysia to India. It had to be very legible. My sketches are really quite sketchy so that everybody understands what I was trying to convey. So the exhibition was really much about the photographer and the art and craft of photography in the 60s and 70s as much as the founding fathers. I wanted the exhibition to convey certain qualities due to this black and white, positive and negative, hidden and revealed, and red, the color of the mock-up dark room we created for the exhibition. So as visitors were leaving the exhibition, they come across two interactive wall panels where they see themselves in negative color in real time. This is particularly intriguing in the Middle East, where men traditionally wear white and women black. And it's a surprise for visitors to catch themselves in reverse colors. In fact, many guests were coming close to the wall and grinning and smiling because the tint appears black and rather strange looking. Everybody had a good laugh. This small mosque was built in the 1930s, and after 2 years of restoration, it became the Islamic Art and Culture Museum. It is especially beautiful, the light and the columns in its interior. In a 1920 travelogue by Chesterton, he described the mesmerizing effect of Arabic script in architecture, repeated again and again like ornamental stars or flowers, like the chorus of a song. Indeed, one is driven to repeat oneself about the repetition so that overpowering is the impression. And we designed information panels to mirror the actual colonnades, as you can see on the extreme right bottom, adding to the museum's overall symmetry and magnifying its repeated geometry. The white interior of the museum served as a blank canvas for the interplay of various qualities of light. I would like to add, a designer ought to leave beautiful places alone. The layout of the interior is symmetrical. We were to design the signage, but we concurred with the client that there will be no signage for this museum, not even a single sign. The transparency allows one to see through the entire space. The museum content was divided into 3 sections: the Islamic world, the royal realm, and the Malay world. And the navigation was actually on the captions itself. If you read the captions, you know where you are. And finally, with partners from different design disciplines, we established Zakti, a 360 design neat technology company with storytelling at its core, with partner offices in Dubai and Brunei. So the tech team has been working on several world expos, including content development. And so I think we will see some very exciting work ahead for museums, galleries, and experiential spaces. Looking very much to 2021 and onwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, William, for this very inspiring talk with a lot of meaningful elements from Kelly and highly educational talk to Yah-Leng with her immersive approach to wayfinding, and of course William with a lot of meaningful approach and meaningful project. So thanks to the 3 speakers today. It was a true pleasure to listen to your talks, and now we can move on to the Q&A session. So we received quite a lot of questions. So together with Ola, we'll be asking you what has been shared with us. Maybe you want to start with a question, Ola?
So we'll read some questions from the audience that we've been receiving throughout this talk. The first question is for Kelly. Hi, Kelly, love your presentation. Any examples of wayfinding design in Singapore that you find the most effective or your favorite?
Okay, so I think I split out into effective and favorite. The most effective I think is botanical gardens. I love going there. It's just full of plants and all that, but you somehow never get lost, or even if you get lost, it's quite nice, and you are able to somehow navigate in a very natural and relaxing way. So that's my favorite. No, sorry, that's the most effective. Favorite has got to be the National Art Gallery, right? Because it's designed by
I'm sure that was a challenging project in its own because of the challenges of the architecture and the historical buildings and connecting all of the different spaces.
Yes, totally. In fact, Jan was working with me for a while in the beginning. Yeah, so it was very challenging, but it was an 8-year project. Yeah, so a lot of challenges, but I think we managed to pull through in quite a satisfactory way and aesthetically pleasing. So yeah, so it's good.
Okay, but thanks a lot, Kelly. So we have few questions. Actually, it's to all speakers. Do you have a process to test out your wayfinding? So maybe you can start with Yah. Now, how do you test your wayfinding?
Yeah, of course, with paper mockups. We'll do paper mockups, not necessarily actual size, but if the signage is small, then it can be. And we just have to ask people to walk around and just observe. It's very simple. There's nothing like a real life test.
That's very true in terms of test. But when we look at the work of Yah-Leng, for example, Yah-Leng, how do you do when you do such large installation? Because your immersive approach to wayfinding, how do you test them out in reality to convince your client, for example?
I think it's the same paper mock-ups as well as mock-ups, but well, we have to work with the contractors to help us with some form of actual basic mock-ups. I guess for us to see whether it's a feasible, identifiable signage at a certain distance. And then when it comes to graphics, it's really just something we have to show. We can only show sometimes on the computer, which is not the best, but yeah. And we also sometimes employ technology to help us to navigate, well, to help the client navigate the way they could to imagine how the space and the signage would be a VR system that we try to test out on, but not always. Yeah.
Okay. And for you, Kelly, is it the same, like paper mock-up and like 3D representation?
Yes and no. So I usually look at it in two parts. Yeah. So we have the wayfinding strategy, which is quite different from the wayfinding graphics. So in terms of the strategy, we usually try to kind of like test it out on floor plans. You mark out all the intersection points and all the keynotes and all that, and you build the hierarchy. It's actually very complex, and sometimes, in all honesty, in terms of wayfinding strategy, you can't be 100% correct. And it's even after the signs are put up, it's a little bit of the testing process, and then before the place is open, you walk around the real space and you decide if you want to add some additional graphics. That's the way to go for strategy. In terms of the graphics itself, as with what William and Yah-Leng has said, yeah, we actually get the contractor to print out actual size in full size, and then we test it. We paste it on the wall and all that, and then we check distance and all that. For every single different panel, every single different hierarchy, we lay it all out and then we check it in terms of visibility. So it's two different things.
Yeah. Okay, thanks a lot.
The next question is for Yah-Leng. Yah-Leng, how do you craft the story for each project in a unique angle? And how do you determine what are the key characteristic elements are out of the many others?
Well, some projects are projects that we will be working on a brand identity for. So I think that's a really easier angle to work with once you have established that through branding. The other projects would be projects that would not require a brand or other, branding identity, but singularly wayfinding project. For those kind of project, I mean, whichever route that is, it's always for us to find out the DNA and the essence of what the company or the space is about. And then from there, we could then sort of like single out what are the key story that we want to tell. I mean, there are different ways that we can approach, anyone can approach designing or, designing a narrative for the space. So I guess it's a decision that needs to be made then and then. So yeah, depends.
Sure.
Then-
Understand, yeah.
Yeah, it's I think we have many questions arriving, and there is one in particular that is related to the discipline itself. Is there any particular school towards environmental design? Is there any school of design in our region, especially Singapore, Malaysia, where environmental design, environmental graphics is being taught? If yes, which one are they? And if not, how have you been educated towards that if it wasn't in school? So maybe we can start with William.
I don't think so, because I think now I think we have to relook at design education, because it is becoming very multidisciplinary, and I don't quite know how when design disciplines are studied in silos, how could they actually come and collaborate together? So I think that is a problem in Malaysia, at least in my country. I know that, and also I know that, in fact, she is actually among your audience. I had an student intern from Netherlands about, 20 years ago. And she came from Helmed, and it was truly multidisciplinary. It was the students didn't really choose a topic, graphic design or interior design, but rather choose on what the student's passion is. So it's divided into transportation, into entertainment, and so on. And they learn all the disciplines within that group under that industry. That was quite interesting experiment.
That you are touching at a very specific point, and that we can really see in all of your practices here that you are definitely multidisciplinary by essence, like intervening in many different aspects of experiential design, and we can really see that whether it is through wayfinding or exhibition design, environmental by itself. So that's something that is true to your practice, to be a multidisciplinary.
I think
do you have other questions?
So we have quite a lot of questions, which is very exciting.
Yes, so we are overwhelmed by the questions. So we are trying to make them to make sense.
We have a lot of interest from everybody, and then everybody's curious about sort of starting from your work process to how do you deal with challenging situations. So one of the things is probably not specific to environmental graphics or wayfinding, but maybe it is. How do you specifically deal with phases of creativity block and feeling burnt out in this industry? So I think this is a question for everybody. Maybe we'll let whoever feels the most passionate about this respond to the question. Kelly.
Yeah, because you're smiling, so you have something to say.
Yes. We feel like you're holding back.
I mean, honestly, creative burnout is unavoidable, especially for some of us who have been practicing for decades. It gets a little bit tiring. So the only way is sometimes for me is to ride it out. You really just have to take a complete break. I don't know. I mean, do something else. So find an alternative profession like this. Yes. So you find other sources of income while you wait for your mind to kind of clear, and then and you start again. This is the reason why there was a I was working in a big firm, Page One Publishing, as a creative director for 8 years. And when I stopped, I was very tired, so I decided to open a bar and art gallery. I think Jan was a frequent drinker at my bar. Yeah. So so I took a break, and when I was ready, I started the press room.
Great, great, interesting, and always, as always, humorous response. Thank you for that, Kelly. Shall we move on to the next question?
There are various questions, and some that are like talking about the practice and talking about the influences. You've been in the industry for some time now, and you've been some evolutions in the trends. Do you think that there is a Southeast Asian kind of identity to your practice, or do you see that there are still and they will still be having any kind of cross references between whatever is happening in the rest of the world? I'm not saying the West, because the rest of the world is pretty big. So how basically do you deal with this identity from Southeast Asia as opposed to the rest of the world? And how does this inform your practice? Maybe we can start with Yah-Leng on that.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't really think that, particularly in Singapore, I don't feel like we are particularly trapped in a style per se. Everything comes from a different source of inspiration. And I mean, I think Singapore is so smart, and everyone's been very exposed to various different cultures, because I guess because of our geographical location, we do travel quite a bit. And because we are a hub, we do get a lot of influences. I don't see, I mean, I just want to say for myself, I don't see particularly a huge Southeast Asian influence on at least my practice. Yes, there are times that we had to design something for a cultural institution, but that's always resolved with using perhaps materials that were used perhaps traditionally or historically from a certain era in Singapore, maybe, but that those kind of application has always been very modernized. I feel like Singapore maybe is a different sort of environment that, at least for the way I approach the design, it's always something that is very today, as opposed to something that is has a certain sort of cultural or identity to it. I don't feel like I do that, so I'm not sure of who Kelly or William could share.
Because in this, it would be quite interesting to hear from what you say. From Kelly, for example, do you see an evolution of the style that our school of thought towards experiential design, experiential graphic design in Southeast Asia? Is it a nascent discipline, or is it something that has been happening for years and that is strengthening? What do you think of this?
Okay, so I think for me, right, the different disciplines of design, it's the response to culture is very, very different, and to cultural evolution. So I think in terms of architecture and in terms of product, it's the evolution has been very distinct and very obvious. You see, I'll just kind of narrow down and maybe focus on Singapore. For example, like in terms of Singapore architecture. If you look at in the 60s and 70s, our pioneering fathers, like people like William Lim and Tan Kwan Bee and all that, they are very influenced by postmodernism and the metabolist movement and all that. It was all very, very Western, but if you look at today, fast forward to today, I'm very proud that our architects are building a very strong identity for not just Singapore architecture, but also Southeast Asian architecture. I mean, look at Woha. I think they are a very good example. They are really doing very good sort of tropical, sustainable high-rise architecture, and things pretty amazing, you see. So I think there is a very distinct voice of Singapore, tropical, Southeast Asian, whichever term that you like, it's a terminology, but it's very strong and it's very clear. In terms of product design, I would like to reference to, say, maybe the Thai designers, you see. They always have a very distinct voice in their design. That is because they have a lot of craftsmen there. So when they design their products, they could actually tap into all these available crafts and craftsmen in Thailand. And whatever they do, because of the craft in it, it is just Southeast Asian, you see. So back to Singapore, you see, we have this problem. We have no craftsmen, we have no natural resources. So it's very hard in terms of product design to have that kind of voice where you can easily tap into a kind of a craft, you see. So for us, we have no choice but to lean into technology, you see. So in terms of product design, we are more westernized, if you like. I mean, I don't like to use that terminology, but that's the closest I can think of. I mean, because the only way we could create something is using, riding on this technology to create, and we do not have any craftsmen. Then if I zoom into graphic design, you see it's even tougher, right? No natural resources to play with, no craftsmen to play with, not much of an evolution. I mean, our graphic design scene is still quite young, right? So that is not, we are still building up the history, and we are still building up the culture of graphic design for Singapore designers. And but I think it is slowly evolving. I mean, we have a lot of good designers like Theseus, we have Asylum, we have Black, we have Yah-Leng, I think the voice is slowly emerging, and I think it will only take time, and it needs time for us to build up a certain identity and a certain clear, distinct sort of voice in the graphics area, the same way that architecture has achieved. Very long answer. Okay, sorry.
No, thanks, because it is very informative, and also to reflect on the history of the region, and to see like how to embark on the future, which is even more important in this time of COVID, which is an extraordinary time. So it is important to reflect upon what has been happening in the past, to embark towards positive future. So maybe we can move on with other questions. You have a question for William.
So probably something that a lot of questions that we're getting about this kind of like cultural, dealing with different competing Western, Western sort of non-Western cultures, and what is what are some of these influences? What is prevalent? What is dominating? What do people want? And what are the trends? So the question for William from Michael Go is there is a growing trend, or should I say perception, that many local clients prefer to use more Western style design for wayfinding projects. How do we sell them local inspired concepts and directions? And how are you successful in this direction? So maybe some of the tips or experience that you can share with your work about that.
Well, first of all, you can't force culture onto a building which has no connection to it. So I think every project is quite different, and we need to look at the context of the project, its history, who the corporation is, then we can apply accordingly. Although I have a long interest and passion in Southeast Asian design, I can't really apply it to many of my projects because they tend to be modern, and the client expects a more, I would like to say, a Western-oriented approach to typography and to signage. But I think clients are beginning to loosen up because every building now looks alike. And we are at a very distinct advantage because a lot of projects coming to us are art and culture related. So what I comment for what we do in our work may not be applicable to other design firms who are fortunately or unfortunately settled with very corporate type of thinking from the clients. Malaysia, Singapore, so rich, and the Dutch were here, the Spanish were here, the Portuguese were here, the long history of English colonial government. And we got a large community of Indians, Chinese, Malays, the indigenous and the tribal tribes from Borneo. And I think clients are now beginning to realize that we have actually such a rich culture. I mean, we always had, but they just realized this is incredible to me. I think one project which was quite interesting was a commercial shopping mall in KL called Sungai Wang. And it was the first time ever we introduced the languages of Borneo into the shopping mall, the Iban, the Dayaks, so it was quite an interesting experiment because, and I think the opportunity is now really having gone through Western education and having realized how rich this country is, and for clients to realize that as well, I think it's going to be a very exciting future.
Thanks a lot for your answer, William. Again, really inspiring. Like we are listening so much to what you are saying, and we are trying to concentrate on the questions as well. So maybe we will shift a little bit the conversation towards the making of experiential graphic design and the making of environmental design. And it's a question to Yah-Leng. How do you see your practice in terms of project development? Is it that wayfinding, environmental graphics, experiential design should come at the beginning of a project? Or is it that, like the way that you have been practicing so far, that it comes towards the end of a project? So how do you see that? At which moment it should enter in a project?
When you say a project,
sorry, to give a bit more context, like a building, like an interior, because you shared with us your project for these offices, for example, or even the co-working space. So at which moment of this architectural project development did you enter in the project? And did it have an impact on your creative process, for example? And therefore, is it better to come at a very early stage of an architectural project or later?
For us, because we do mainly brandings, and wayfinding is part of that brand expression, right? For us, branding is always the first thing that we have to resolve and establish before doing anything else, whether it's interior design or the wayfinding. And as for wayfinding, it's okay to work with the interior. It could come. I would say wayfinding could come later than the interior, which is fine. So sometimes we work with projects that's just a standalone wayfinding project, or it's an interior project that is also a wayfinding project, and it's always the space design that comes first. Figuring how the flow is first, and then wayfinding comes later on, because wayfinding is also something that I guess could sit on how the narrative of the space could be eventually. So that is kind of how we work. And if we are doing a brand identity for that project, then obviously the DNA, the narrative, the elements, the inspirations should all come from that basis. Should inform that.
Thank you, Yah-Leng. Yes, definitely informative. So just moving a bit, talking a bit more about the narrative and the branding as part of this wayfinding and experience making. How do you find emotions affecting the design process? And do they affect your design process, or do you implement different strategies to evoke emotions in the visitors, in the public that's visiting these spaces? Maybe that's a question that I will ask Kelly, if you have any input.
I think it's a very interesting question, because in any sort of design, there are times when you want to evoke emotions, but there are also times when you might not want people to feel so much. So I suppose in this case, the question is, how do you evoke emotions, right? I think in an exhibition design, in order to evoke emotion, you really have to engage the different senses. It's not just about designing a 2D or an object. I think you have to engage. You have to use audio. You have to use. That's why we also work with like sound designers and musicians. It depends on what is needed. So we will bring in the sound. We will bring in the visual. We'll bring in the touch. So the touch is also about designing the textures and all that, and also designing the overall sort of journey. What do you want them to feel in each space and all that? So you have to look at it in multi-dimensional when you want to evoke emotion in someone, because the human being is a very complex animal. You can't just expect to put one thing and then they can feel a lot, unless you are maybe Picasso. So as a designer, we have to kind of build in layers of different emotion to trigger the senses.
But even in this, beyond emotion, when we see the work of William, where you are introducing meaningful stories behind the wayfinding, how much is the content penetration towards the audiences? Have you been able to measure that, to understand, like when we see that you are talking about endangered species, for example, that you place in your wayfinding, because people believe that wayfinding should be just functional, okay, go from point A to point B, but you are adding this layer of education, of raising awareness, and as Kelly mentioned, the emotional side of it. So is that something that is important in your design, and that the content penetration, the message penetration towards the audiences?
I think the penetration would only be successful if we handle the entire project from start to end. And in some cases, like the museum, we do have a certain control. Talking about the panels where we featured the characteristics of animals and WWF and responsible palm oil. It has no feedback, but a person would read the information, hopefully gain a better knowledge of it, but there's no feedback mechanism in those panels. But it was part of the blueprint with the client that they would actually execute exhibitions in collaboration with Nature Society Malaysia, WWF, and so on. And that's where the real response will come from. So in the case where you saw the shopping mall, it was just a trigger, just to increase information, but there was no immediate feedback. For the trees, the local trees, actually, I was talking to the client that it should be part of the corporate literature where they could produce leaflets. At the time, there weren't many websites. This was a long time ago, just to educate people and just to expand on the beauty of trees and descriptions even more as part of the corporate philosophy and corporate literature. And I think that would be successful. But in many cases, actually, these are executed by the advertising agency, of which we got no control. But that was in 1985, and now we have actually much more control over projects with our clients. So I think it's a matter of how much are you in charge of the entire project from start to end and beyond, where you can actually determine whether the messages have actually gone through to the audience we intended to.
Okay, but thanks a lot. I think we are reaching almost the end of the talk. We can have maybe one concluding question to each of you, because these are questions that have been coming back, especially towards younger audiences. What would be your concluding note to motivate and inspire young designers to continue in this field of experiential design, emotive design, immersive, environmental design? So what could be your final address to the younger audiences to motivate them towards this profession?
or even how do you start in this profession? Because I think there's a lot of still mystique about it. Like what should you do? How do I get into it? What can I do to be better? To be one of you guys essentially. So I think we'll take it around the circle. So Kelly, do you have any advice for the up and coming future designers?
Okay, so I think in terms of wayfinding and exhibition graphics, it's if you want to go into this field, I think you have to be a little bit all-rounded, because you must understand spaces, you must understand graphic, and not just like illustration or something. You need to understand type. You need to understand the proportion of type in space, not just on a piece of paper. You need to understand content. You need to understand what storytelling is. You see, you need to understand how to use multimedia or interactive, not just a touch screen. So I mean, there's a lot of things you have to learn, and of course, unfortunately, not any university can provide this kind of all-rounded kind of education. So, so my advice is that if you are studying a kind of a design discipline, fret not. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're, studying graphic design, you're studying architecture or whatever. When you graduate, I mean, try to learn in a company. Humble yourself and be an intern or find a mentor, work in a company, and it's really through experience. You really have to go through the journey and do a few projects. Then you can really feel what works, what doesn't, and then you also know your weaknesses. What area you need to polish up on, what area you might need to take up a course. That's why lifelong learning, right? So I think even for me, every day I'm learning something. Like when I think one of the best way to learn is really to visit museums and places in nice, beautiful places in the world. I mean, now it's COVID, but before that, I travel a lot. Every country I go to, I will make sure to go to all the museums, and that is the best source of inspiration, and also the best place for me to learn as well, to open up my eyes and to say, hey, I like this, why do I like this? I don't like this, why do I not like this? So on and so forth. Yeah. So I think it's really about finding the right place to learn, and then looking at things. And if all else fail, you need inspiration, you can just yeah. So that's my advice.
I also have
That's
on the desk.
essential for all designers. Above by the side.
So Yah-Leng, and after we will be finishing with William. So Yah-Leng, do you have a concluding address to the younger audiences?
I think Kelly said it most already, but I just wanted to add that yes, there's no shortcut, and definitely find your way into a good design studio that you should learn from, because it's not something that you would know or be able to do right away. There needs to be passion, and I guess it's not going to be easy, because design is not just about designing, it's also managing the client, managing the projects, and managing the contractors. There's a lot of human management at that level, and that's something that designers forget, or that they don't know about. So this is something that's real, and that could be something that you can learn or experience when you work at some place. And the passion part is important. If you're someone who is very driven by design, as well as the fact that you could make someone live better, or find a way better, or have a better life in a building or home, generally making an impact with design, then yeah, that's something for you. I don't think anyone is for design or wayfinding design is particular, but wayfinding is not like just sitting in front of the computer, like what Kelly has described. Is you have to make sure that it's readable. It's very physical. It's more than designing on a computer. So yeah, it takes patience, it takes tenacity, it takes determination and passion, and checking the reality that it's not just design, but also managing the different people that you need to deal with in the project.
Yeah, but thanks for sharing that.
Thank you, Yah-Leng. And William, what would be your words of wisdom for the up and coming designers?
Yeah, well, there are two things. I think travel is important. Travel and talk to people. I'm not sure the value of selfies. In the UK in the old days, even though you may have graduated from Cambridge or Oxford, you are not considered educated until you take the Grand European Tour to really see the world. And I think you can find a lot of inspiration by traveling and talking to people, looking at communities, how they see things, understand different perspectives. And of course, most important for young people going into the industry is, of course, passion. Not only passion for design, but your own personal passion or liking or interest in something. It could be sports, it could be art and culture, it could be flowers, it could be toys, because the field is wide enough for you to enter into these specialized areas which really you are interested in. And if you really are interested in, you will be definitely successful.
Thanks a lot for this very profound message. So we'll be wrapping up the day. So I mean, not the day, the talk. So we'll be having a few last slides before we close up. But before we share with you how to reach out to SEGD, how to give feedback, and also how to connect to DSG, because we will be sharing that for the last time. But we haven't said goodbye yet to our speakers. So speakers, please stay before we say goodbye. But if you want to know more about SEGD, you can sign up for membership on that link. You can visit the SEGD website. And of course, you can find out more about the SEGD Singapore chapter by reaching out to Ola and myself. And also, I just want to say goodbye to the speakers before we hand over to DSG for the last QR code. So thanks, an immense thanks to Kelly, Yah-Leng, William. It's a pleasure to have you today. Very inspiring, very interesting, and highly motivating towards this specific discipline that is experiential graphic design. So thanks a lot. We hope that it has inspired all of our audience. Thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you from all of us, and for your tireless dedication, and thank you for joining us, because we had way too many questions, and we're sorry we didn't have too much. We would have been here for hours and hours if all the questions, if we were to answer all the questions. But find out about SEGD, email us, get in touch, get on our email list, because we will be having these informative talks about crafting experiences and about all of the disciplines of experiential graphic design, because as we know, it's not just your traditional sort of field. It involves a lot of disciplines, and people come from all walks of life. So we definitely, I think we are happy, and we're going to continue this conversation through this year.
And also emotive design. So it is the month in Design Singapore. So we will be sharing with you the QR code after saying goodbye to everyone. So thanks again, Kelly, Yah-Leng, and William, for your presence today. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, and to our audience, please stay on board, because you can scan the QR code to give feedback and also to continue with Design Singapore for emotive design in March 2021. Thanks everyone. Charlotte, over to you for the QR code.